welcome to one more episode of Building Families in the Faith. I'm Brian Johnson. This is my phenomenally wonderful wife, Rebecca, and we are excited that you are with us. Before we start, we're going to go ahead and start off reading a verse here in 1 Peter chapter 3, and verse number 10. The Bible says, "For he that will love life and see good days, let him refrain his tongue from evil, and his lips that they speak no guile." And so we see here, of course, there's a lot of scriptures, Old Testament, New Testament, teaching us about controlling the tongue and not lying and all these other aspects about the tongue and how evil it can be, but also how good it can be as well. Today we're going to talk a little bit about our tongue, not our tongue as much as our kids' tongues.
Right. So as we've talked through this, we've talked about different stages, and now your child is probably getting around to talking, and it is amazing how the first thing your child will learn to say is no. So it doesn't take much for a child to pick up that sin nature and really start talking back to you. And as they get older, as they learn to form more phrases, as they learn to speak better, lying and back talking become a real issue, and that's what we kind of want to address today. We've talked about the tantrum, we've talked about things like this. So what happens when they lie to you? And the funny thing is, when kids lie, it's kind of obvious. They'll have cookie all over their face, and you'll say, "Did you just eat that cookie?" And they'll just look at you, and there will be a lot of times a moment of hesitation about lying, sometimes not, that's even scarier, and eventually there will come a no. Well, they just lied. And while we may as adults look at this and think this is terribly funny, because it kind of is. I mean, they're doing it or they've done it and then they want to lie about it, but you can't take it funny. You cannot look at this and laugh it off.
The child can't see you laugh, and the child can't understand that you think it's funny.
Right.
A child will learn quickly what you enjoy as far as humor and their misbehaviors.
That's true.
And they will grow in them.
Yes.
And they will use those to their advantage, not just the lying, but in every aspect that they're doing wrong that we're laughing about. They will definitely grow, and that will become an issue down the road.
Yes. So, if it's really, really funny, you need to step out of the room and go have your good laugh, because you need to nip it in the bud. You need to take care of this. And as parents, we can say there have been times where we were like, okay, you need to go wherever you've decided, their room, your room, you may have a place, you need to go there. And part of the reason as a parent might be that you are in another room laughing your head off, trying to get yourself under control. Now, sometimes we're angry about it, and we talked about controlling ourselves in anger. Of course, we would never ever correct a child in anger. That would be completely anti-biblical. Mm-hmm. But sometimes the control needs to be the fact that you're laughing because it is rather funny, whatever they've just done. And so whatever it is, get the child away from you, get yourself under control, laugh if you need to, calm down if you need to, but you do need to take care of this. Tongue issues are so important to take care of at a young age.
Yes.
We see young people today all over the world. This is not unique to any particular nation. Children have taken over, and the Bible talks about the fact that children will take over and rule, and it will be a detriment to us, and that's what's happened. And a lot of it, it's interesting to me how many countries are complaining now about corrupt government officials,
right,
which is lying.
Right.
But how many of them, their parents laughed it off,
right,
or ignored their lying, and they become lying adults. This isn't a funny thing. This isn't cute. It's not cute when your child tells you no. It's not cute when your child lies to you. It's not cute when they tell you they don't want to do something. It's not funny. It may appear funny at the time, but the consequence of letting that go isn't very funny.
Right. And you need to start teaching them. Well, first of all, just teaching them to tell the truth is not going to stop them from lying.
Mm-hmm.
we have the sin nature in us, and yes, we're supposed to teach them all the good character traits and teach them all the right things that they're supposed to do in their life. But just doing that, just teaching the correct and the proper and the right, will not prevent them from not doing the wrong. We also need to teach them not to do the wrong, and also the correct, and incentivate them,
Motivate.
them not to do those things any longer as well.
Right. So if you don't want a teenager who's talking back to you, stomping their fat little foot and huffing about, then you have to stop it at this young age. And this can begin, now we've talked about the fact that children lie to you from the crib, really.
Yeah.
They're crying when there's nothing wrong. They're throwing that tantrum. But we're talking now more about verbal moments in childhood, okay? At this point, your child, depending on your child's development, they can be between 2. I know 2-year-olds that can carry on a full conversation, especially girls. Or they could be 3. And of course, some develop a little bit slower, and it might be 4. Now, I would be concerned if my child's not speaking until they're 4. I would be checking this out medically. But at whatever point your child starts to come back at you verbally, you need to nip it in the bud, because this will accelerate to a full-blown, rebellious, horrific teenager. There's a reason people dread teenagers. They bred them.
Right, exactly. We need to train our children how to use their tongues. There's many things that we, unfortunately, as parents, often allow our children to do. One of them is lying. Like my wife explained, sometimes it's hilarious that they have, it's obvious they have chocolate all over themselves, and no, I didn't have that cookie. It's a clear situation.
Right.
But lying is not the only thing we need to nip in the bud, but we do need to nip the lying in the bud right away. We also need to teach them to be respectful. It's sad how few teenagers and how few children know the meaning of the word thank you, know the meaning of the word please, yes please, no thank you, and there's no respect anymore in our children, and that's not their fault. That's us as parents. It's our responsibility to instill in them these traits and these abilities to use their tongue correctly. So we're trying to nip them in the bud. First of all, their lying tongue, but also, like my wife was mentioning, we don't want them talking back to us.
Right.
Now, we think of that as a teenager, but that's not when it starts. It starts when they're 3 years old, 2 years old, 4 years old, like my wife was saying. And we often, we argue with our kids. Instead of correcting them and disciplining them and fixing this tongue issue, we start rationalizing with them. He don't need you to rationalize with him. He's a stupid little idiot. Now, he will become that if that's how you treat him as well. But the truth of the matter is that you have the authority, and you have to maintain that authority over him. And as a 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old, I'm not going to be giving him all the philosophy of life of why he's supposed to do this and why he's not supposed to do that. It's just use the words thank you, use the words please, use the words I'm telling you to, don't lie to me, don't talk back to me, don't question me. I'm your parent. And we, by not doing this, by rationalizing with our kids, we're giving them, in the future, the desire to rationalize with God. And when God tells them to do something, they'll start trying to argue with God, and they'll start questioning God, and they'll start wanting God to rationalize with him, and God does not do that. He will tell us in his word, he'll tell us through his Holy Spirit what he wants us to do, and he expects us to simply obey. And so we need to teach our children to use the respect and all these things with their tongue. We're supposed to teach them not to lie, not to talk back to us, don't question us. Yes, there's a time frame that we will teach them the whys, but it's not when we're telling them to do something.
And it's not when they're 3. I can tell you that right now. Just don't bother. So we need to correct this tongue issue right away, and it's something that starts early. It's something that they start using incorrectly right away. As soon as they're talking, they're not using their tongue properly.
And we need to teach them to use it properly.
Now, part of this is your fault, Mom and Dad, because we have a generation of adults that have been allowed to white lie till they're blue in the face. We've had a generation of adults who have been trained to disrespect authority. If your child has been part of any kind of mainstream education, and sadly even in Christian schools today, they have been challenged to challenge authority. So if you grew up in the system, you have learned to challenge authority, and we have adults that lie constantly all over the world. May I please speak with Robert? I'm sorry, Robert's not home right now. Robert is sitting on the couch, but Robert doesn't want to take that call. You do that in front of your children, and your children see that lying is okay. One of the things, and we joke about it, exaggeration. I'm guilty of it. Every woman is guilty of it. We exaggerate for emphasis, ladies. But we do have to be careful, because a lot of times we're just flat out lying. There's a lot of issues that our children see in our own personal lives that lead them to believe that lying and back talking is okay. Another one is criticizing your pastor on the way home from church.
Yes.
You sit there and you criticize the authority in front of your children, and you're telling them it's okay to criticize and back talk, and eventually that backs onto you. But we have grown up. My children, who are now adults, their generation is full of young adults who know nothing but to question authority, to disrespect everyone and everything, to speak with nothing, dripping with sarcasm, hatred, and no one knows how to behave.
Right.
And that is continuing to spill poisonously onto our children. And that's in a Christian circle.
Right.
We're not talking about the world. The world did this a generation ago, and you can see the world today. I mean, they're so messed up. You can't even, they don't know if they're men or women. They don't know what they're doing. So I'm talking about inside our church. We have allowed one generation later from the world for all this garbage to come in, and it's time to pull it back and rein it in. We've got to get control of our tongues as adults, our attitudes as adults, because those kids are picking it up from somewhere, and Mom and Dad, they're probably picking it up from you.
Yeah. Dad, when was the last time you thanked your wife for anything she's done for you? You know, at the mealtime, do you thank her for the food? Do you use the words thank you? Do you use words please? Do you use words that we're trying, or we should be trying to teach our kids to be using? If you're not using it, how do you expect them to use it? We need to instill in them, don't lie, and we need to not lie. We need to instill in them the respect for authority, and we also need to respect authority. And there's just a general respect all around that we need to be applying it in our lives. Of course, the kids, everyone's an authority to them, but we as parents, we as adults, we need to respect our bosses, and we need to respect our church leaders, and we need to respect each other. And we need to be using our tongues properly, not yelling at each other, not lying to each other, not lying on the phone like my wife was saying. We need to be respectful one of each other. We need to be using those same words kindly, with the thank yous and the pleases and the yes ma'ams, the no ma'ams, no sirs, yes sirs, and all these things that we should be instilling in our kids. This generation, my generation, we need to get back to doing it ourselves. And so as we instill it into our kids, we need to reapply it to our own lives as well.
Also be careful what your children are watching. Let's face it, we're the digital world. I can't sit here and say that my children never watched a television show, and quite frankly, neither can anyone else. They may not have a television in their home, but they watch it on a cell phone or something somewhere. Everybody is going to watch something at some point. Please pay attention. We have talked about this before. Pay attention to what your kids are watching and hearing. If a bad attitude is cropping up, if a word is cropping up, I've heard of children saying a cuss word and they're 2 or 3 and the parents are appalled because they're Christians, it's never been in their home. but they're not paying attention necessarily to what the child is watching on those tablets. We've talked about how dangerous, and we're going to talk about it more and more and more, how dangerous those cell phones are for children. The iPads, they don't need this. They don't need this. Yes, every mother's guilty of putting their kid in front of a television to babysit for a minute. Every mother. Just let's all admit it. But it is not a good thing. We need to be careful. You may be surprised what your kids are hearing on their little YouTube channels.
A lot of their tongue, obviously we all have this in nature. We will do things just because we're sinful. But a lot of what they say and a lot of what they do is what they've observed.
Right.
Whether through their older siblings, whether through us as parents, and a lot of times what they watch on TV. What they watch on a cartoon, what they've seen here on YouTube, what they've seen there. And we're so busy with our own lives where we're not paying attention to what we're allowing. It says it's a cartoon, so it should be okay, right? Most cartoons nowadays are built within them to create disrespect to authority.
Yes.
Most cartoons are created to have the wife, the female, as superior and more important than the male. And although there's no the wife is just as important as the man, but I'm talking about positionally here that God has instituted. And the cartoons here and the sitcoms as well, they're bombarding our children with the out of proportion and out of the right order of authority that God has placed in the scriptures for us to follow. And a lot of the words they will use, a lot of the phrases they will use, a lot of the disrespect they will use come from us, come from their brothers, sisters, and especially, honestly, from the YouTubes and the TVs and the whatever they're watching. It's not just creeping in, it's dominating them.
Yes. Now, when this happens, you need to correct it. Obviously, we've talked over and over again, you don't ever correct a child that hasn't been trained. The first time it happens and you realize, oh my word, what on earth? Okay, find the source, figure it out, and then teach little Johnny or Julie that they cannot be doing this. This is wrong. Explain to them why, okay, from now on, now that we've dealt with, okay, we know this is happening, this isn't going to happen anymore. And then the very next time it happens, immediate. Not, I warned you, don't do that anymore. If you do that one more time, you need to get right into correction.
Yes.
Immediately. This one more time. Stop it, Mom, stop it.
Count to 3. That's
don't
not,
count.
Yeah, no counting.
Just get to it.
God counted people. God didn't count attitudes, or
He did not count when he was going to correct. He just corrected.
A simple way to use one of the things we use for correcting our kids with their tongue. Since it's the tongue, we put soap on it. We cleaned it up, literally. We would just and that we put it on there, and we didn't let them spit it out for a little bit. Obviously, it wasn't hours or even a lot of time. It was just a little bit there,
like
but
30, 40 seconds.
But they had to have
die.
They had to have that taste on their tongue. Don't give them a chocolate soap. I don't think that exists, but make sure it's the something that they're gonna not like, and you put it on their tongue, and as part of the discipline factor. That did help us. It's an easy way to do it.
And for all of you who are panicking right now because we said discipline, breathe. For heaven's sake, breathe. Your child won't die, and he won't be scarred physically or mentally the rest of his life.
In fact, he will be scarred mentally if you do not discipline correctly. I guarantee you that right now. And we'll talk about that further on down the road. But let's make sure that we're not training the bunch of politics we have today, a bunch of liars who don't know how to control their tongue. Let's rear our generation, our kids, let's rear them with the truth on their tongue, with honesty, with respect, with politeness, with ethics, and with something it's lacking all over, not just in America, not just in Brazil.
Everywhere.
It's lacking everywhere in the world. And so it's a thing. The Bible teaches us it's something that's hard to control, if not impossible. But we as parents can do a lot to control it in our kids. And because it is something that is going to be an issue, it's something that you're going to have to treat, or something you have to deal with often and all the time. So be aware of that and be prepared to be consistent in your discipline. So, anything else you want to?
I think that's good.
All right.
You can do it, parents.
Well, thank you for being with us for one more episode of Building Families in Faith, and hope you join us next time. God bless.